Hello, Boone County. This is your Superintendent, Matt Turner. I'm here with Heather Bushelman. She's our director of our multi-tier system of supports. Heather, thank you for being here and taking time to talk about the performance of our kids. Here we are right now in the middle of the school year, about halfway through our school year, and we're always trying to pay attention how our students are doing. And parents are doing the same thing. They're trying to understand, where are my kids now? How are they performing in their classes and their different subject areas? So talk a little bit about that process of what goes on in a classroom with our teachers, trying to make sure all of our students are performing at a high level.
So within the multi-tiered systems of supports, we know right now our teachers are currently teaching all students at a very high level. They're differentiating instruction at that tier 1 level is what we call that. So that would be any school-wide implementation that every student gets for academics, but also for social emotional behavior competencies, which will be your attendance, your positive behavior supports, mental health services the school offers, and our non-cognitive skills. So currently our students are all getting that, and as far as progress goes, we look to see at that tier 1 level, how are all students responding to our instruction, and then that's when we can start determining what supports or enrichment our students need moving forward.
So on a regular school day, students for the most part are getting tier 1 instruction, and that happens for the vast majority of every single day. So some students that are struggling though, struggling academically, our teachers and our administrators will kind of look closely to see, why is that? Why are students struggling a little bit? Can you talk a little bit more about that process of how that works at the ground level for teachers and administrators to kind of determine, do kids need extra support and what that might be?
So our teachers are determining how students are doing by looking at, of course, a lot of data. We are very data rich, but they are collaboratively meeting every week in their professional learning communities, and they're determining how our students progressing every single week. So they are looking at every area. They're looking at academics, they're looking at behavior, attendance, and typically that will involve your teachers and other staff members, school counselors, your family resource coordinators, administrators, instructional coaches, interventionists, to determine how are our kids progressing, so that way we know how to proactively intervene or to enrich. If the students have mastered certain standards, we know to start enriching them in those standards.
Heather, talk about tier 2 instruction. You've already explained what tier 1 instruction is in the classroom. What does tier 2 look like?
So typically for academics, it happens in the general ed classroom. You may walk into a room and see a teacher having 4 or 5 small groups rotating at the same time. Some of our teachers switch students depending on their skill level and what skills they need intervention on or enrichment. But then some of the tier 2 supports could be a school counselor may have a small group for 5 or 6 students who need help with resilience or grit, based on their student competency survey results. So sometimes it is a pullout, which of course the parents, are always being transparently communicated with about how their students are doing and then what's next, and how is the school going to wrap around the student to make sure we are meeting their needs.
So Heather, talk a little bit about the role of the parents in this situation. Their students are struggling and teachers are paying close attention to that, providing some extra instruction and maybe providing some additional support if they're really struggling. What do parents need to know, and typically how will they be kept in the loop on this work, or actions, I should actually say, how are they involved in the work with the teachers and the administrators?
So the family engagement piece is very important. We want them to be involved in every step of the way. So I know our staff, they're usually reporting results of how their kids are doing weekly. Of course, we know we have report cards and progress reports that go home, but it's bigger than that. We want to hear how our families are doing and how our students are doing at home when they do have homework, and how our families view school. Did they see some growth areas, and did they see some things that we're doing well? And as we go through the systems of support, when we do see students who need those extra supports at tier 2 or tier 3, we always have very transparent communication with our families by calling them, maybe meeting with them in person just to discuss how their student is doing, but then what are we going to help them with very specifically, and then gain input from the family because they know their kids best, and we want to make sure we honor that.
Absolutely. So in a general sense, we have tier 1 instruction, which is the most of instruction every single day. It fills the needs of the vast majority of students, and we have a small number of students, all students at certain times struggle a little bit with things. Tier 2 is providing some additional support in the classroom through a variety of different methods. Talk about Tier 3. What does that mean? So a student is still struggling or struggling in a significant way. What do we do at that point in time in our classrooms and our schools to help those students?
So Tier 3 is those most intensive individualized supports that we provide students in our schools. So these are students who they still receive Tier 1 services and they still receive Tier 2 enrichment or intervention. But at that Tier 3 level, they are being taught in a very different way, usually one-on-one or even maybe two-on-one with other staff members in our building, like our interventionists that we have for academics. They are charged with making sure they pull together students who need those specialized skills for foundational skills for academics. Our school counselors may have a one-on-one check-in with the student instructionally for behavior every day, a few times a week. Typically with Tier 3 level, we pull in other stakeholders to make sure we are wrapping around that student as best as we can, so that way we start decreasing whatever those special needs are, and then we can hopefully get them back into just Tier 2 supports and eventually just having Tier 1.
So Heather, how can parents be more involved or in understanding this situation? What's their role at home, and what should they be looking for or questions they should be asking to try to make sure they understand how their kids are doing or if they need additional support or not?
So the open communication is the first key to all this, is making sure they touch base with their teachers, and as their teachers reach out about their academic supports, behavior supports, other services, attendance their students may need, that they're asking questions. And how is my student doing now, and how is the Tier 2 supports going, how is the enrichment going, and then asking at home, are there things they can do at home to support the same language being taught at school and the same types of different types of interventions at school. So it could be different types of websites, it could be strategies at home as they're doing homework. If it's behavior-based, it could be the same language that they're talking at school to help that student be wrapped around for behavior that they could support at home as well. So it's really having that collaborative relationship with the staff at school to make sure they're always in the know about what their student is doing and how they're achieving.
How do parents need to be involved in this process? Because obviously we're working with our children, providing supports to them in different ways. How is the parent involved, and how should they try to be involved, and what should they be expecting from the schools?
So I would encourage our families to reach out to the school. If they haven't heard from the teacher yet, it's always an easy phone call or an email to make. And our teachers have data available at their hands to be able to pull up any student and see academics, behavior, attendance, any of those skills that they're concerned about and how in real time that their student is doing. And then have that discussion of, maybe we'll keep them on watch, or at school they are progressing and this is what we're seeing. But if the parent is really concerned, just always checking in with the teacher to make sure that open dialogue is there.
And so if I can summarize some of the things that we've talked about a little bit, we're saying a multi-tier system of support is just trying to wrap around our students all the resources we can, knowing that not only do we want them to do well academically, but also understanding that sometimes a student's attendance or their behavior or other things that may be going on in their life are affecting their learning at the classroom level. Is that right?
Yes, which is one of the main reasons we implement MTSS. We're not only focused on academics, but those other factors that impact academics directly, between attendance, behavior, non-cognitive skills, and there's mental health services available, of course, we know in our district, just to ensure we are wrapping around the whole student. And we're talking about where are they, we're hearing their voice in that student competency survey to ensure we are making very data-driven decisions, but also very proactive decisions with how we're implementing these services for students.
Heather, I'm going to show my age here. Years ago, there was a process called RTI, Response to Intervention. Now, is that the same thing as what we're talking about here with an MTSS system, a multi-tier system of supports?
So RTI is part of the system for MTSS. So all the work we've done as a district for those responses to interventions, we are still implementing those. And that's how our students respond to intervention, and it's really academic based. So those systems have started being built for a few years, just like you said. With the professional learning community work, they meet every week, how we implement Tier 2 groups in our classrooms, and so that's part of the holistic MTSS system is that RTI. So it's one piece of it, plus you have your social emotional behavior pieces as well.
How does a multi-tier system of support look different in elementary school and middle school and high school? And what are some of the different services that may be provided in each of those levels?
So all students receive those Tier 1 services, preschool all the way through 12th grade. So that will be all the implementation happening already with our teachers' instruction, school-wide implementation models, any initiatives we're already doing for positive behavior supports. But what's going to look a little bit different is developmentally, what do those schedules look like? So I know we're working with our staff and looking at what do our adults need to figure out how does this look at middle school, high school compared to elementary. The schedule will look different. It could be they have Tier 2 interventions at different times, different days, who's serving, who's going to be implementing those services, and then for the Tier 3 level, who is going to coordinate those most intensive services to ensure we wrap around those students as well. So it's really looking at some logistics of what do our adults need to be able to do what's best for our students.
Heather, my experience as an educator now of 33 years is when students kind of own their own learning, when they get to that point where it's not if I need help, it's going to be when I need help. In this situation with a multi-tier system of supports, how and what part do the students need to play in this? Do they need, how do they advocate for themselves?
Mm-hmm. So a big piece with MTSS is student voice. We want to know, like you said, when they need help, and it does, I guess, remove the barrier of them asking questions and asking for help versus being embarrassed about it. We know they're all going to need help, and as we developmentally move through this model, by the time they get to Milton High School, they will have more of a voice of, I need to go to this intervention class, I need to help with this skill, just because they recognize it and they feel comfortable asking their staff, and that support system is there. So a lot of this work really starts helping our students have the voice in their learning to advocate for themselves.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you, Heather. You're doing a great job. I'm really excited about all the work that you have going on and the things going on in our district here. So thanks for your work in that. Well, you heard it from the experts here. Thanks, Heather. This is your Superintendent, Matt Turner. Have a great day.